Moody Gardens. My name is Greg Whitaker. I'm the general curator here at Moody Gardens, and on behalf of the entire Moody Gardens property and our staff, we would like to welcome you to our third annual Ghost Wolves Town Hall. You're going to learn a lot about the fancy coyotes that live here on our island. And I'm going to hand it over to Josh Henderson, and he's going to take it from here.
Thank you, sir.
Yay, Josh!
Y'all ready to learn something new tonight?
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to hear it from me. Urjan. I have to introduce you to my new friend, Urjan Patel. Traveled down here from Dallas for this presentation tonight, and he's got a few things that he's prepared to share with us. And so, Urjan.
Hi, I'm Urjan Patel. I live in Dallas, Texas. I go to White Rock Montessori. Last year, I was doing an animal project, and I learned about the red wolf. It really gave me an impact for what I wanted to do for my project. So this year I decided to start working on a fundraiser for the red wolves. And so me and a couple of my friends are gonna do a fundraiser in the spring, and we're hoping to raise a lot of awareness for the endangered red wolf species. We're going to donate all of our money to an organization named Save the Red Wolves, who is trying to make awareness for the endangered red wolves. And it's just, I'm very, very thankful for being here today. And it's been very fun with all the people I've met, including Dr. Kristin and Dr. Bridgett.
Thank you, Urjan. All righty, folks, let's dive in here. Now, just to go over a little bit of the structure of this, we're going to cover coyote or ghost wolves, their background, their habitat, movements, the monitoring, data collection, coexistence work, and reporting programs. You're going to get a genetic research update, as well as some community-based public citizen science information. Ecocentric development on Galveston. How in the world is that possible? I promise you, it's possible. As well, we are going to have questions, comments, and discussions. We're not able to make any decisions. There's not one person in this room that has the ability to offer legislation regarding species protection, and we'll cover that. We're not here to make demands of developers, but to offer insight and some expertise on the topic when it comes to developing this island. We're not here to tell the community what to do, but we want you to be informed and have all the tools available at your disposal when you need them. This is about sharing information so that we have an informed and educated public. We're hoping for respectful dialogue along the way, but by all means, please do submit your questions, even if they're a little salty. Thank you, Moody Gardens, for hosting this. This is now the third year we have benefited from what an awesome venue for this town hall. The intro video that you've got to see a few times now in a loop is courtesy of Chrissy and Jake Kleiberg, who were kind enough to let us use some of their footage from the Chasing the Tide series. It is an amazing series. If you have not watched it yet, get ready to binge that whole season. And the third episode features Galveston. We also want to thank some of our community leaders that have really been instrumental in helping with this effort, both from the aspect of protecting Galveston's ghost wolves to their habitat and all of the ways that that habitat might be impacted. And so we thank you for your continued support. So a brief introduction of who we are. Now this little red QR code in the bottom. You can scan it now. You can scan it as it pops up throughout the presentation. That is how we will go about answering your questions throughout. When we get to the Q&A, that QR code leads you to a really simple form you can fill out, and then we'll have all of your emails as well as your questions, so that if we're not able to answer your questions tonight, we can email you and you can still get that information. So you'll hear tonight from Dr. Brzeski, Dr. vonHoldt, myself, Ron Wooten, and Mohamed Eldawy is the CEO of Royal Crown. He's one of the folks with an upcoming development on the island. And so we're going to dive into my piece of the presentation. My name is Josh Henderson. I'm the Executive Director for the Galveston Island Humane Society. Prior to this role, I was the supervisor for the Animal Services Unit here on the island. The Humane Society still does play an integral role. We are the go-to location for the island's injured wildlife. We're also the location where we typically will process not only the roadkill, but the live trapped animals get processed, collared, and then ultimately released. And so I want to go back. Last year, we talked a little bit about this guy and the amazing distance he traveled. So initially came into our hands September 19th of 22. Since then, he's been busy. Now, the little dots there, that's the very first time we got a tattletale reporting from his GPS collar. Each of those dots is 4 hours apart. Every 4 hours, we get a new little dot on the map. It's been a few hours. 830 days he's traveled over 3,345 miles. That is no small amount of distance, and that number is only if he walks in a straight line from dot to dot. I promise you, from chasing these guys, they do not do straight lines. This one, captured June 27th of 2024. It's also been busy. Now, he's only been able to carry his little track around for 184 days, but that's got him 731 miles. Both of these animals are traveling on average about 4 miles a day. You'll also notice that in both of these cases, we've got a lot of dots that are far off the island. So this one carried a collar from December the 16th to February the 6th. 52 days is only 152 miles. It's actually a little bit less than that 4 mile daily average, but his is all here on the island. Unfortunately, he got in a fight with a car and lost. It is the leading cause of mortality in these animals. And so when we talk about things like wildlife corridors and preservation of habitat and trying to keep these animals in a wild area, it's exactly, this is one of those things that we're preventing. So 3,345 miles or 731 miles, that's walking from here to Greenland. So let's talk for just a quick second about how effective would it possibly be to relocate a coyote. This has been one of our frequently asked questions. As long as I've been answering the phone to talk to somebody about a coyote, why can't we just relocate them? We should just put them out at the state park. We should take them to the zoo. There's a million different knee-jerk reaction places that we can obviously relocate these animals to. I promise you, they don't have a problem to travel. If they don't get hit by a car, they're coming right back home. And looking at where they go, home might be out all the way over there by Palacios. They might not actually live here, not year-round. So what purpose, looking at this map, does relocation do? Where are we going to move them that this is not, it's not effective? Relocating coyotes is not worth anybody's amount of time or effort. Anybody remember this? You might not have got to see it because your power didn't work. But for those who got to see the radar, you might remember this little guy named Beryl. When he came through, he left a mess. Now, both of the fancy coyotes you got to see dots on, they got to ride out Beryl, and no lie, this is the hurricane cone of uncertainty in this top corner. This gentleman actually took a drone video just after impact, and this little section of dry ground in the top of this photo is this neighborhood, right in effectively ground zero, and then between the Holiday Inn and Sea Isle neighborhood out west is where those two got to spend the hurricane. They are still alive and well and traveling about. I do want to mention that we do have some resources available beyond what you'll hear tonight. The city of Galveston does have a wildlife page. It is absolutely worth digging through if you haven't done so yet. You can scan the QR code, you can Google Galveston wildlife resources and learn all kinds of exciting things like, did you know that we have alligators on the beach? Would you like to know why? We're not discussing that tonight. Look at the website. The Galveston Humane Society now has a coyote information page. If you go to our website, and when you're done donating or looking for a dog to adopt, you can go to our resources page, and you can get all kinds of information. You can get a general information handout that basically, it goes over the basics about what these animals are, what to expect with them. Hazing guidelines. What do you do beyond just tell the coyote to go away and show him your cell phone in a threatening manner? It really is a little bit more involved than just hanging out and showing him your cell phone. And so please go through these, as well as why in the world would one of these animals want to actually hang out in your backyard? Do you have any idea how to go through your yard, your property, and determine what might be attracting those animals into your property? We've got that information available to you, so please check that out. If you see one, we're going to go through a whole bunch of publicly submitted dots and the information that connects with them. This is how we get that. The Galveston's GIS page allows you to go pull out your supercomputer from your pocket, ping their location, and tell us what that animal's doing. You don't have to like these animals in any fashion to submit it. And for those who might be in this room or watching this later, and you don't like these animals, you have had something you would consider to be a negative encounter, I would urge you even more so to share that information. This is what we get with it. Now, not only do we get these dots, we got all of these dots in 2021 when we launched this program. And there's quite a few of them. We found that utilizing this method got us a lot more information than forcing you to contact the police department, then rerouting you through animal control. You can make one of these reports faster than you can post on Facebook. In 22, we also got a few reports. In 23, we still got reports. We still have these critters here. This previous year, in 24, we also got some reports. But we don't just get the location data. This is where those public sightings and observations really come into play, is what was the animal doing when you saw it? Was it really just crossing the street? Was it biting a baby and stealing it out of a stroller? All right, well, those are two wildly separate categories, but there's got to be some stuff in between yanking babies out of a stroller and crossing the street. At the same token, because there is such a difference between crossing the street and yanking a baby out of a stroller, how do we categorize all of the stuff in the middle? This is a relatively standard categorization. It's used by far and wide more jurisdictions than just our little island. And so because this ranking system of behavior is currently the best practice standard, this is what we have been using for the last number of years. You'll see what we have reported by the public falls much more heavily into the green. For those who don't like just looking at numbers and like pictures, having native wildlife on the island, this is normal. Having coyotes in South Texas or throughout the United States is normal. And granted, this is Galveston, so just because we have coyotes with a fancy Galveston twist. We've got some of the fanciest coyotes around. But the fact that they're crossing the street is not a problem. Having coyotes, period, is not a problem. Having coyotes displaying behavior that falls into the wrong category, that are too brazen, that are actually exhibiting behavior that is a threat to the safety of the public, that is a problem. You know, the safest place for your cat, feral or not, the safest place for your cat is in the house. If your cat is missing, dear Holy Lord, please come to the shelter and put your eyes and check for your cat. Please file a loss report. It's really, really easy to do. If your dog is missing, please come find it. You know, we have far more critters on this island than coyotes. We have rattlesnakes that hide in the dunes. And so please don't let your dogs, I don't care how big or small they are, run loose in the dunes. It's actually against the law. So do your part, be a responsible owner, keep your dogs leashed and with you. If they do go missing, please come find them. I want to share some exciting numbers and some really not exciting numbers. Come the end of the year, conveniently, I've got our statistics for this previous year at the Humane Society. You know, the lion's share of 87.9% of the animals coming through the Humane Society last year were stray or abandoned animals. That's a really staggering number. To look at the amount of cats alone that have come through the shelter, either through the trap, neuter, release program or simply as strays, those are staggering intake numbers. I want everybody to take just a second and look at all 15 cats that were returned to their owners in 2024. Last year I was able to boast a little bit higher number of 16. If there's any number on this page I would like to change, it would be that one. Please, when your cats go missing, know that it's possible they were not eaten by a coyote and they might be hanging out in the shelter with all of their new friends. Please secure your pets. Please know that simply the presence of a coyote crossing the street is not a problem. There are resources available to you. And should you have a question, scan it. I'm going to hand it over.
Oh, yay. Okay, I can work this. Hi, everyone. I'm Bridgett. I am going to give a quick refresher on the fanciness of the coyotes you have here. I wanted to remind you about the wild canines that exist in our country in North America. I've listed up here several flavors of canines, mostly the wolf variety. If you look in the upper left-hand part of this map, so in the Pacific Northwest region, we have gray wolves. Gray wolves are very common, and they're expanding their range. They also have gray wolf populations in the Great Lakes. So Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, you can find really wonderful and also some unique gray wolves there. There's a subspecies of gray wolf, the Mexican gray wolf, found, of course, in the Southwest. I know I put Alaska down here. It's a little bit detached, as it always is in these maps, but they have their own very healthy gray wolf population. But what we're really here today about is those red wolves. And you do not find red wolves anywhere in the wild that isn't humanly managed. So we know that red wolves were declared extinct in the wild in 1980. That means for roughly the past 45 years, the only place you see them are in captive facilities under human care. They've been leading the captive breeding program to help prevent the extinction of red wolves. And when that population gets big enough, they get to release a few of them into North Carolina. That is what you see on this map. There's roughly at any point in time 20 animals, 20 red wolves in the wild. You're lucky if you see one. Hopefully you don't hit it with your car, as that is predominantly the big problem that they face, just like the animals here. That number is typically going down. Some years there's one litter born and everybody rejoices, has tears of joy that the population has reproduced, but they face another year of mortality. So I want you to understand that red wolves are not in the wild. And that brings us to understanding how we think about conservation and the role that our fancy coyotes can play with respect to red wolves. Now, the captive population of red wolves is doing well. There's about 250 red wolves across 49 captive facilities in our country. I love this picture of these pups. These were born in a Tacoma Zoo, I think in 2019. I think they look familiar. They might look like the little guys running around your yards, your street, the beach. And rightly so. They are very closely related to the ghost wolves we have here. But the captive breeding program has been successful, but yet there's always challenges with this kind of conservation program. And that brings us to adding to our map this ghost wolf population that you see here. You have our star. This is a new location. We have red wolf DNA sprinkled across the landscape here, being carried by these coyotes. Some of these coyotes have an average genetic ancestry of maybe a couple percentages. I'm sure many of us have investigated our own genealogy, so we think about genetic ancestry in percentages. We might even come across animals, as we have pretty frequently, that have upwards of 70 or 80% red wolf DNA. As a side question, how much DNA do you need to be considered a red wolf instead of a coyote? Don't ask us that. And then this history, oops, what keeps happening? And then the history we all know of Ron's amazing set of photos. Again, this is the one that usually gets used in the media because it's beautiful and gorgeous, and it came across my email inbox a couple years ago. The striking feature is, again, the way these animals look. I've given you a reference image of a red wolf down in the lower left corner. This is a red wolf from the captive breeding program. Not only do the pups look familiar, but so do these adults. Because they're carrying this amount of red wolf DNA that we can detect, anywhere from even a few percentages up to 70, 80%. This red wolf DNA has to have come from somewhere, and we're referencing them as ghosts because we haven't seen animals, red wolf animals, on the landscape for 45 years. So there's some remnant of them floating around, and we're really trying to understand that history. The short schematic that I hope helps, even though it's far more complicated than what I can draw in a cartoon, is that we imagine in the 1970s when red wolves were on the decline, so steep that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was very worried that they were going extinct. Now, as a red wolf, let's imagine each of us are red wolves, and There's only a handful of you left, and when it comes breeding season, you need to find a mate, and you prefer to mate with another red wolf. But if you don't find one after you search and search and search, but next door you got a whole healthy population of coyotes, they'll do in a pinch, and they're also evolutionarily very related to you, so there really isn't any reproductive problems or challenges. Hence my little heart there between the red wolf and the coyote. They have a litter of a first-generation set of hybrid puppies. Each one of those puppies carries 50% red wolf genetic ancestry. Hence my little DNA strands. That's the one I care about. Now, those pups will most likely grow up with a coyote society because that red wolf will have very few opportunities to interact with other red wolves, so it ends up joining this coyote society. Those puppies, 50% red wolf DNA, grow up with coyotes and probably mate with them or other little pups like them when they sexually mature and continue to pass on that red wolf genetic ancestry through the generations. So we are capturing that signal when we look at these animals out here on Galveston Island. We sequence a little bit of DNA. We're like, yeah, we see you. Your red wolf DNA has been persisting over 45 years or longer. So this is my schematic, and we'll come back to this again later just to make sure that we talk about all the wonderful complexities of this relationship. What I'm going to do next is just interrupt my genetics version, hand over to Ron, and we'll come back to more genetic research updates.
Thank you. Which way do we push? This one?
Ron's pictures are amazing. Yep, this will be the forward.
All right, cool. Hi, I'm Ron Wooten. Apologies for the crackly voice. For those of you who don't know me, I've lived down here since 1990. Came down here after graduating from A&M. My wife and I have moved down here with our 4-week-old child. We've had a BOI child down here. So we've been down here about 34 years now. The way this all got started was I was writing for Galveston Monthly, and we let our dog out with a leash. He ran off through a ditch in Jamaica Beach, and a pack took him because if you guys don't know anything about Ike, after Ike, there was no noise at all on this island. There was no animals. There was nothing on this island, except for a lot of sand on the roads and a lot of quiet. We would see these animals eating out in the garbage in Jamaica Beach quite a bit. We made the mistake of letting our dog out. He ran off. I went out into the field where they had him. I chased him off, brought our dog back home, buried him in our yard. But because I was writing for Galveston Monthly, I thought it was time to write an article about these animals. So I tried to get some pictures, kept on trying, never could get a great picture until about 2013-ish. At that point, the picture showed up. So, and that's, thankfully, I am most grateful that this team has allowed me to talk tonight. I don't deserve this, but I'm honored to be here. So let's go through some things that I've noticed on Galveston since we've been here in 1990. So we moved here. This is a Google Earth image, and I just drew a polygon around every green space that was still here. I didn't get I could have gotten the total, in fact, I think I did get the total acreage, but I don't have it written down right here. But this was the total green space that was on Galveston in 1990. So what does that mean? That means there was a lot of good things here. We moved down here, and we enjoyed it because there was lots of green places to go. I was a wildlife biologist, fisheries biologist, so coming down here was awesome. So since 1990, these are the different places that have been developed since we've been here. This is roughly 1,600 acres of developed property. Why is this important? Loss of habitat always impacts wildlife down here. So the green spaces there again are the undeveloped properties. The red spaces are what's been developed. Acreage is beside the names of different places. San Luis Pass all the way to East Beach up there. Okay, I apologize. I need to let anybody know if you have problems with seeing dead animals. I apologize. When I first saw these pictures, the pictures that Dr. vonHoldt shared there, they looked kind of strange. They look kind of weird. They look like red wolves. They look like they'd maybe, I told people it looked like they'd made it with Marmaduke because they were so tall and lanky. But because of that, I thought, well, we need to check these animals out because they look like red wolves. So in the time of taking that picture to the time of approaching different people and trying to get somebody to answer and research these animals, I actually found a couple of dead animals on the side of the road, took some tissue samples from these animals and put them in my freezer. Thankfully, my wife was very considerate of me and kind of me to let me do that. Anyway, they waited in there until I could find somebody, and thankfully Dr. vonHoldt and Dr. Brzeski were willing to take that on. So these are some of the different animals that have been impacted by development. So you say, well, they get hit all over the island. Well, the places these animals are typically found is places where development has occurred. Up in the top left, you see Point West and San Luis Pass. The animal that was up there was a beautiful female. She almost looks like a Mexican wolf if you look at her. Very different. She was up against a metal rail alongside the road, the crossing over to one of the subdivisions. Kahala Beach was developed. I apologize, I can't see the yellow very much. I'm sorry, should have made it brighter. Anyway. This animal was this year. That is a young female. This animal was hit in the middle of 3005. And of course, Kahala Beach was developed. There's a natural area across the place, but then we have the space further up there, just to the right or just to the left of the picture itself. That's Indian Beach, and that's where Indian Beach was developed. And at the time, they only had the roads down there. The animals were still hanging around until it was developed, and then the houses came in, and it changed a little bit. We have Pirates Beach West here. This was this year. This was a yearling male. This pup was hit. Pirates Beach West was developed in 1995. And there was a beautiful field, had beautiful trees out there. If you were down here and you saw them, they were beautiful trees. They're still there. I'm glad people have a place to live out here. It's nice. But again, it's an impact of development. And then Beachside Villa and Stella Mari RV Park. Those were the two initial canids that the tissue was obtained from. Those animals were hit right by where Stella Mari was being developed and where Beachside Village was being developed. So the impacts of development was, they were taken in the winter of 2 different years, 2014, 2015. Their tissue is what was in the freezer for a while. We have the secondary development there at Beachside Villa. This was a yearling female. She was very thin. She was hit last October, right before this town hall. And she was trying to find a green space. If you can look up on the top left of that picture, you can see what it looked like when they were developing that property. They built dunes, or they pushed all the dirt up into large layers. And this animal needed to find a green space, a green corridor to go get to the beach so she could go get her food. So she ended up getting hit there. Then we have a Diamond Beach adjacent here. That was hit this past July. This was the one that was featured in the Texas Monthly article. You read that. And it was running through a corridor space there, trying to get to the beach. So the question is, does the development impact these animals and their safety? In my opinion, it does. It may not be in all of your opinions, that's fine, but in my opinion, it does. So this I went through Galveston CAD, Central Appraisal District, and I pulled all the shapefiles from the CAD for Galveston, for the island specifically, and I opted to look at them and see by whom they were owned. The green spaces, the big green right there in the middle, that's the state park. The big green area to the right of State Park, that's mostly artist boat. Other green spaces can be seen throughout the island. Yellow is government property. You can see there's some pretty big government property here on this island and Pelican Island. Purple location, these are citizen groups. These are groups from different subdivisions that have chosen to set aside habitat for preservation, and I think that's the purpose of this. Blue areas are private properties. These are listed by people's names, last names, first names. And then the red is developers and business investors, money. It's mostly that. So you can see that throughout the island, there's quite a bit of red space. Fortunately, we still have quite a bit of green space too, so that's a good thing. But we need to talk about how we're going to make this coincide, how we're going to keep our green and red together. So this is a breakdown. This is the green and the yellow government property and the purple citizen group property. You can tell it's a pretty good, a substantial amount of property here on the island that is that seems to have some sort of preservation ideology with it. The developers throughout the island, there's quite a few that own property. And so the hope is that we can work with the developers going forth and try to make these developments have some sort of green space or help provide some corridors for these animals or make it safer for their movement. Does that make sense? And I just opted to take one of Josh's collared animals and put it on top of the complete CAD data. And you can see that they're pretty, there's some places where the animals like to live, where they like to hang out. And those seem to be the places that are the most impactful if development comes. Make sense? All right, so I'm going to pass this on back to Dr. vonHoldt, and thank you.
Thank you, Ron. All right, we will continue with some updates from our research end of things. Hi, Kristin. So we have our team who are studying the Gulf Coast canines. Two of us are here today, Dr. Brzeski and myself. We have a third member, Dr. Dana Morin. She was unable to make it, but she is leading our field component, mostly outside of Galveston at this point. And our scope is to really try to understand how the fanciness of these animals shapes the way that these animals look and how they behave and their role in the ecosystem. So I wanted to start with this picture of a red wolf that is from the North Carolina population, the only place you can see one of the 20 wild red wolves on the landscape. This one is carrying on its neck a GPS collar. Now, a red wolf is usually bigger in size than your fancy ghost coyotes here. So this GPS collar is also a little bigger than the ones that Josh and Kristin use on the island here. But these collars are safe. They are tracking and pinging that information on where animals go, the frequency at which we can learn about their whereabouts, translate that, like Ron nicely showed us, to help us plan and understand how to coexist with these animals on the landscape. The collars are fitted on adults to hopefully not have an animal outgrow them. So it's not common practice at all to put them on young animals. It's common practice to make sure that there is space for an animal to grow a little bit more, gain a little more weight, but they do not hinder the activity, the normal daily activity of these animals. They do tell us when the animal dies, and we hopefully then can go and retrieve them. So just a little background on what the collars look like. They look big, but this has no impact on their ability to be a wolf or a coyote. The research update, I'm gonna just give a brief timeline of how we've gotten to where we are today. Most of our beginnings can be tracked through our publications and our activities starting in 2018. This was when we were able to publish our first finding on the rediscovery of red wolf DNA in your fancy coyotes. We've been continuing on every year, holding at least one field season per year, typically a lot more. Kristin and her field team show up here frequently. You might see people picking up scat and poo. That's her and her expertise. Make sure you wave to her when you see them doing that. I know the scat team is also here, and Kristin will be talking a bit more about that. But all of that field research is helping us learn a lot more about how these animals live, where they live, what they're eating, how they're going about their normal lives. And developing this kind of non-invasive citizen science program is essential. We don't want having to collar every animal in order to learn about them. We can do it from a distance, and that's what we're transitioning into. What I do want to say is our biggest announcement, in my mind, in my whole life, I imagine this is the biggest announcement I'll ever have, is that in August of 2024, Kristin and I and Dana Morin, our third member, were awarded federal money from the National Science Foundation, $2.1 million. And this still blows my mind. I'm still not entirely sure that this has happened. But I don't believe it because we proposed and are given money to study these animals. And up until August of 2024, I feel like my life has been battling against no one wanting to know about coyotes, let alone fancy, like the fancy variety of coyotes. And to get this amount of ability and resource to do that has changed how we're approaching and doing this work. So this work is large. Most of our field work for this project is focused in Louisiana, but what we're doing is we have a lot of other work built into it, which includes all of the scat track team and lots of other community engagement, involvement, and studying animals far and wide as we can. What we also will be doing is creating an experimental captive breeding population. And I also thought I would never utter those words. We are partnering with the Endangered Wolf Center, located just outside of St. Louis in Missouri. And we're building enclosures for which we will understand more about a handful of these ghost wolves. We will be moving some animals from Louisiana, a handful, 4 or 5, and looking at how they go about reproducing, caring for their young, the development of behavior, all under the umbrella of how much red wolf can we see shining through these animals. And that is going to give us so much more insights and tools for how to proceed in understanding the role of ghost wolves to prevent the extinction of red wolves. Again, here's that schematic. I warned you, I don't lie, it's back up here. These ghost wolves carry, each of them, carry a unique part of the puzzle of what is a red wolf. And what we know is that all of the red wolves today descend from only 14 founders. That is how many animals started the captive breeding program in 1977. But we know that more than 14 animals of red wolves lived ever in their existence. There's thousands and thousands of years of records in evolutionary history that more than 14 red wolves existed. And your ghost coyotes, ghost wolves here, carry many of those pieces of the puzzle that we did not know existed until 2018 when Ron entered my life. So this money will help us understand more about that history and how all of those bits and pieces of red wolf DNA got into these ghost wolves here. The thing that always is my life effort is to use words very specifically and define them. We love to throw around the word hybrid, and I would like to ask you not to do that. We do not have hybrids here. These ghost wolves are not hybrids. Hybrids are, or hybridization, this is a very specific term that when you understand the pedigree of that animal, then you can use that word. We typically think about dog breeds and hybridization. You mix one breed with another, you get a first generation offspring, that's a hybrid. And then you start having other fancy options on what to do with that first generation hybrid. I have some little chromosomes drawn up here to hopefully help. The very top line shows two animals. Since we're diploid, we each carry 2 copies of our chromosomes, and the color of the chromosome is just referencing a genetic ancestry. There's blue ancestry and red ancestry. If you have a blue organism and it mates with the red, it has offspring that each carry 1 chromosome from blue and 1 from red. I would call this a first generation hybrid, and we can predict it should have 50-50 ancestry, blue and red. Now, the complicated part, which is what I love, and this is, I can't believe this is my job, this is so amazing, I get to track what happens after that. So we see the middle line here, we now have a deviation. We have our first generation hybrid that ends up reproducing with a full-blown red organism. Because chromosomes are wonderfully complicated and they like to break and fuse together in really different ways, we have new sets of chromosomes that have more red ancestry, and that blue part has decreased. That's a second generation of admixing or mixed ancestry. We come down here to our last line and you'll see that all of our chromosomes are broken up into tinier and tinier blocks. This is now showing us that there's a much longer evolutionary history, that hundreds or thousands of generations of this mixing has been occurring. We don't see a new red colored organism coming in or new blue organism, but we end up seeing a lot of mixed ancestry animals reproducing with other mixed ancestry animals, and it's very complicated to try to tease apart that story. That last set of bands, that's what you have here. So they have very wonderful, complicated, long histories intertwined between coyote and red wolf DNA. Now, here's hot off the presses, everybody. We've elevated our research to sequencing entire genomes of these animals. Now, I say that in contrast to the more affordable way that Kristin and I usually can work with, is sequencing just little bits of DNA from everybody. It costs me less, I get a pretty decent picture of what's going on, but we had a windfall recently, and we're able to sequence all 2 billion nucleotides of 25 animals. Thank you. That's a lot of data, and it's really wonderful. But I've distilled all of that into a few pie charts for you. Those 25 animals, if we split it down the middle, okay, my math is wrong, let's say 24 animals. 12 of those animals were canines that were sampled in 1974 from this area of the country. 1974 is roughly the year that the Fish and Wildlife Service said, we gotta go capture the last red wolves alive and move them into the protective custody of humans. And when they went out searching for those last wild red wolves, they captured a lot. They captured over 400 animals. And for each animal, they looked at it, they did some measurements, and they had knowledge, but they didn't have genetic assessment back then applied in this fashion. So each of those 400 plus animals they looked at and classified it as either a red wolf, a coyote, a red wolf coyote hybrid, or a dog coyote hybrid. And most of those 400 plus animals didn't make the cut as red wolves. They disposed of them. Interpret that as you will. Of those 400 plus, they came up with 14 that ticked all the boxes of being a red wolf. Now I'll talk about the slide. These are 1974 animals. There's only a handful of pie charts. That's the DNA of some of those 400 animals that I have that was good enough, that survived this 50-something year journey in my freezer. And we've sequenced their whole genome, and I've simply classified each one of those animals, there are 2 billion nucleotides. I've classified each of them by how much of their DNA matches coyote and how much matches red wolf. I'll have you guess which color of the pie slice means red wolf genetic ancestry, everybody? Yes, red. So these are from 1974. The red is red wolf genetic ancestry. Some of these look pretty darn good. They look pretty red wolfy. The one with an asterisk down there in southwestern Louisiana actually ticked the box for the federal government as red wolf. And she was sent to Tacoma and became one of the founders for the captive breeding program. And I think she ended up having like 27 puppies in the breeding program. So yay on this mama. The other animals did not make it in. Some of them have pie charts that are equally as red. So yeah, there's a little bit of challenge with the system, and looking back in time, we could have made some different decisions. But I want you to compare these pie charts with now another equal number of genomes we sequenced from 2 years ago. We have multiple animals on some of these locations. So again, by that founder with the asterisk in it, I've sequenced another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11 animals from the same location. They don't look very different. There's some other pie charts over here with a pretty high amount of red on them as well. When I do some statistical testing, my question is there less red wolf DNA today than compared to the 1974 animals? And I would expect that there should be, because we don't have red wolves in the wild, they're extinct. I would expect very little red wolf DNA because there are no red wolves around. It doesn't matter how you slice it statistically. There is no difference between the amount of red wolf genetic ancestry in your animals today than my comparison to the handful of animals from 1974. Yes, this could change if I sequenced 3,000 more animals, but if you have a few $1 million to give me to do that, I won't have that information. But the fact that I could go out there and sequence 12 here and 12 there, and if you handed me blindly the data, I could not tell you if it was from then or now. So this is pretty significant, and it tells me to tell the government, we need to rethink how we define things. And the animals here are really very interesting. We ask then the questions of what do we need to understand the animals we have today, how we define species, how we put them into categories needs to change. And what I think we have is a case for these fancy ghost wolves are carrying around pieces of the red wolf evolutionary history that we thought we lost forever. If we look at each one of these animals, I think we can piece together a story that's much bigger than what we even think we've had today. So another cartoon, because I really like trying to distill this stuff into really cute little cartoons. The story of how this DNA got here is thinking about, I'm a geneticist, so we have beans. We always love colored beans. I have a bowl of colored beans that represents the genetic diversity of pre-red wolf extinction, so the 1970s. We see all of these different colors of beans. Red wolves had genetic diversity, but not all of it made it into the captive breeding program. Thousands and thousands of red wolves, but only 14 were found and moved. Where's my, there. So there's the founders that moved into the captive breeding program. The colors of beans that didn't make it into that, here it's the little purple bean. There's a few purple beans in the 1970s. There are none in the captive breeding program. So if we only look at the captive breeding program red wolves, we're missing out on knowing that information about the purple bean. And please, I want to know about that purple bean. And I think that purple bean is existing in these fancy coyotes. Each one of them is carrying something that wasn't brought into human care. That there's a whole story that we're piecing together just by looking at DNA, and it's going to give us a richer understanding of the biodiversity that we have. Okay, wait, is this me?
I think it's me.
I think it's Kristin.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Yay, Bridgett. So I'm going to follow up that amazing overview and update from Bridgett with one of the questions that we're often asked, probably the thing I'm asked the most: how can I help ghost wolves? So we just established how unique they are, how distinct, how they're representative of something we thought was lost but was living here in plain sight. And now, what are we going to do? Right? And we have these really variable landscapes that we're working in. We work in Southwest Louisiana. We work here on Galveston Island. There's lots of discussion of development. But the reality is the landscape is really varied. And so we're interested in understanding how this persistence of the ghost wolf varies across this variable landscape. And to do this, we are first have to figure out how to advance this. There we go. We are working to develop a program that we can utilize, all of you or anyone that is interested in answering that question of how can I help the ghost wolf? How can I help this research effort? And one way to do that is SCAT, which is the fancy way wildlife biologists say poop or fecal sample. And Bridgett has an ongoing joke that every Zoom call that we're on together or every presentation or meeting, she tracks the time it takes for me to say poop in a professional setting. I think
36 minutes.
Yeah, I think I just beat it tonight. I think I said it within the first like 10 seconds of talking. But that is because we can utilize this biological sample across the landscape to get at these interesting questions that we've been kind of proposing for the last 3, 4, 5 years of conducting this research. And we're developing a program we're calling SCAT Track, from SCAT to conservation, community-based research of ghost wolves. Right? And this is a beautiful animal on East Beach right here. So this is community-based. This is the goal. And when Bridgett was going through some of those research updates, something else that we're really excited about is a small grant that we got from the Galveston Bay Estuary Program to help us do this, to help us actually have workshops to work with all of you to do this community-based program to help us collect that DNA via SCAT samples. right? And here are some awesome volunteers, some of which are in the audience. Thank you so much, that were collecting scat on Galveston Island just this June. It was real hot and buggy. We're gonna do workshops not in June in the future on Galveston Island. But that's just to say, here we are doing it, right? And the way this ideally is going to be working is whether you're on a walk or you're working with a group after going through some training with us. If you find canine scat out in the field, ghost wolf scat, through your efforts to pick it up in a clean, safe manner, which that's why we're doing workshops, right? You can ship it to the lab, and then we get to do the really fun genetic work to be able to say something about that scat, to answer our questions that are important for this ongoing work that we're doing in conservation efforts, right? So how do we go from a poop sample, right, to information about movement? So we saw collar movement. We can get movement information from scat, habitat use, pack structure, data that can help developers and landowners to make the most informed decisions possible, right? By getting this landscape level of data. How do you go from that poop to this pretty cool figure here that we published a few years ago, looking at family groups of Galveston Island fancy coyotes, so basically these are family packs that we determined via scat and non-invasive genetics. Bridgett just gave those super awesome schematics to understand the genome in admixture and recovering those purple beans, which is amazing. And the whole genome data that is so exciting for us to truly understand the broad mixture of ancestry that these animals have. You cannot do that from a scat sample, okay? That is, you can do from a blood sample, a high-quality tissue sample. Scat does not give us good DNA. It gives us, I mean, pun intended, it gives us crappy DNA, right? So what we are able to do, though, is develop methods that we can just get little tiny snippets of that important information, little tiny snippets of that purple bean, and then all the other beans, to actually be able to take that scat sample and do something informative with it. And it is cheaper than sequencing a genome. So that is also a useful tool when we think about management and monitoring priorities. So what we do is extract DNA from a scat sample. And the beauty of it is you don't just get the ghost wolf DNA, that red DNA strand with the fancy coyote standing next to it. You also get the DNA of everything that individual ate. So now we have the ability not just to track the individual identification through its DNA, but we have the ability to start understanding about something about its ecology, right? What in the landscape that we're interested in understanding the variability of genetic ancestry and the variability of the different habitat, the green space, the development, the salt marshes of Louisiana, right? We can understand the diet of those animals, which helps us understand how they're persisting there. And here's an example of some of our previous work, right? So now we can take from that scat sample, extract DNA of the host, the individual canid, and then look at each one of those pie charts as an individual across Galveston Island. So now we're able to say, who is this individual? Are they a male or are they a female? How related are they to the individuals around them that we're detecting through a scat sample? And what is their genetic ancestry? It is much more limited information than those beautiful pie charts from whole genome data, but it is a really informative and useful way for us to screen the landscape to find these unique hot spots of our ghost wolves. Similarly, we can then start looking at diet percentages, right? So here's a schematic example of what a diet breakdown might look down in an individual. This individual here in that purple ate a lot of rodents, right? So out there eating mice, eating other probably rodent nuisance species. If I had to guess, based on just walking around a little bit here, you know, this time of year, I bet rabbits are in a lot of diets of the animals around here, right? So then we can start looking at seasonality, and we can report that back to the broader community, and like, how does their diet vary by season? How is that can be used for us to understand, you know, potential conflict or potential coexistence mechanisms based on how they're interacting with the broader ecosystem. So I stood, I think, right there about a year ago, and it was captured in the Chasing the Tide video, saying, don't send me poop. So I'm on national TV now, on PBS, saying, don't send me your poop, as we were talking about some of these non-invasive efforts.
Send her your poop.
No, send me your poop. Yeah, right, your wild fancy coyote scat. Right, that's the type of poop we're talking about here, right? So we have launched and doing the pilot work of this Scat Track program to start building out this map of individuals and their movements and their diets and their ancestry across the landscape, for which we need everyone's help. What I am really excited about these efforts, and also really excited about this opportunity tonight, is that there's been a lot of discussion this year and last year about development on the island, and the impacts that that development has on the really unique wildlife that persists here, right? And this image is one of Ron's that I stole, and then put blue dots, all those little blue markers are scat samples that have been collected, either through citizen scientists or through my graduate lab, right? And we can see that there are some clusters across the island. There's a big gap, which if you can remember back to Josh's slides of the observations, were filled with observations right in the center of the, you know, the densest part of downtown. So we would love to be able to overlay observational data across the island, right? And then we can overlay that with the scat data across the island, fill in those gaps, and have this really comprehensive overview of how the animals are using the landscape, so that when, you know, there's questions of development, we can go to someone and say, hey, look, here, this is what's happening on this property. Here's what's generally happening on this type of property. And then you add the collar movement on top of that, and now we have this beautiful holistic picture that we can use to understand and monitor and advise and provide some guidance based on sound data. So very excited about the ability that this can have to help inform development and really enhance our ecological understanding of the system here on Galveston Island. So like I said, where are we at with this? We're ready for help. So if you are interested, please submit your email on our question form today, right now, okay? I'm gonna take a pause. Because if you get your email on that list, we will send you, we'll get you on our big master list of the, I think we've had a couple nicknames. We had the Mad Scatters was one of the proposed nicknames for the group. I like that, I think that's cute. We'll get you on that email list and update you to instructions. We have a beautiful instructional video. I didn't want to play tonight, but I'm really proud of it. It's really nice walking with someone, finding a scat sample, going through our process of collecting it. Right, so we'll have training videos. As the spring, potentially fall come around, we will be doing a workshop, and we can invite people to, right? And so please submit your questions, your research questions, but also please submit an email and say, scat, interested in scat, right? Scat track help, and we'll get you on that list and keep you updated, because it's not just about, you know, people helping build out this data and build out our understanding of this community, but it's also about giving that information back. So the long-term goal is through our website is to be able to say, here's what it looks like before we have our scientific publications. We can get information out on the data that we're collecting so that people can see and understand and get to engage and learn about the really unique animals here on the island. So with that, I'm going to hand the microphone over to a special guest tonight, Mr. Mohamed Eldawy, who is going to be sharing with us Stronger Galveston through thoughtful development and preservation. And before I hand over the microphone, I was just going to say at the end of Mohamed's discussion, we will take about a 3-5-minute break. Please submit questions, any questions you have, and we'll come back and we'll just get to reading that, that populated document and answering as many questions as we can. So thank you.
Okay. Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the invite for today. Thank you for the team inviting us and partnering with us in that great event. And I would like to introduce myself. I'm Mohamed Eldawy, CEO of Royal Crown Enterprise. Okay, Royal Crown Enterprise. I'm personally coming from the financial industry, been working with Morgan Stanley as a financial advisor for a long time. Yeah, thank you. Do you hear me?
No.
No?
Closer.
Put your lips like on it.
Oh, like here?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's like new for me. So I want to start with our vision, really why we're choosing Galveston for our next development. Everyone here knows the unique location for Galveston and the history of Galveston and why Galveston has a special part in our heart here for everyone. As the only gate for most of people already to get into the ocean, to the beach, Galveston is #1 for everyone as a destination. This island has a limited space or land that put us in like a duty to preserve this land for the next generation and also for us to enjoy growing the city, boost the economy in the city, maintain the national preserve in the meantime. This vision for us, starting with looking at the city and see what the city need, what the local community looking for. We found that the west side of Seawall Boulevard of Galveston still need like some development to enhance or boost the city, the same as the development happened in the east of Seawall Boulevard. So our development in the west west of Seawall Boulevard, coming with something extraordinary, is not similar in Galveston happened before, which is the mixed-use development. Something similar like city center in Houston or Baybrook, like having a destination for the public to add like another destination to enjoy a beach front or ocean view and developing el west of Seawall Boulevard. So we're coming with 3 different phases between mixed use with condominium retail surrounded by retails like a restaurant, it's some different retails, courtyard in the middle for public use, and also we're gonna have a hotel and apartment in the back. While we developing this area in the west of Seawall Boulevard, we balance between both the growing of the city and also maintain our natural resources, which is here El Ghost Wolf. So we planning to contribute part of our property to develop a place for Ghost Wolf to, give them the heritage or the place they can move around free and also continue preserve our Ghost Wolf. How we do achieve this balance between city growth and maintain our natural resource? We do this by design, or the site design that we working on, by building a unique design balance between the wetland, flood-prone areas, and also preservation of natural habitat. We identify our and protecting critical habitat for local wildlife, sustainable infrastructure. Sustainable infrastructure solutions such as stormwater management, native landscape, energy efficient building. I think this also is a kind of protecting our city and our natural resources by having something like green energy. Also, we, through community engagement, working closely with local stakeholders to ensure that our development needs, our community needs, while respecting the island history and encouraging. So our plan is to set aside a land for national preservation. Like if you can see here in the picture, this is part of the land, of our land in the backside, that we're trying to add a corridor for the Ghost Wolf and engage with the public, like connect the public with the natural resources. So support the coastal resilience by protecting the wetland, enhancing community, promote enhancing community well-being by creating places for people to connect with the nature. Ensure that Galveston remain in fact for future generation, which is, this is like for me, I believe this is very important for everyone, that we deliver the city to the next generation with even more natural resources, preserve it, and keep growing the city on a side by protecting the natural resource and deliver it to future generations. This is like part of our design in the back. So at the end of west of Seawall Boulevard, there is a line of, if you can see here, of some apartments. And this is the corridor, the trail that we are trying to design for the natural preserve area to connect the community with the natural resources. So our design coming with a trail like this, surrounded by two sides of natural land. So we have this area that looks like a natural place that a local community can enjoy walking around and connect to the natural resources. And I think that's all. Like here, I like this picture because this is the main like entrance to the our natural resource preservation. So we plan to have like an area with a connection with the ghost wolf and with the community for them to can connect and share and see how the life of ghost wolf during around the area. So I think that's all about our development. And at the end, I want to say it's our role to enhance the development in our city, in Galveston, and make sure we preserve our natural resources, balance between the development, not only us, but each developer coming to Galveston has to work in the same direction to balance between growth and natural resources, as we have only a limited land in Galveston. So we don't need to just focus on one side without even taking care with our natural resources. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right, so if you all would give us just a few minutes, after you requested for volunteers for poop, we're up to about 70 questions and offers to collect poop, so thank you for being such a crappy crowd. If you would bear with us for, we're gonna take about 3 minutes to divvy up how we're gonna go about answering these questions, and we'll be right.
Pass the mic around. I seem to have the first one, which is, do we have regular coyotes on the island, or only the fancy kind? And that is a good question. For the most part, nearly all of the animals that we've sequenced have detectable amounts of red wolf DNA. In my opinion, if it's detectable, they are fancy. Very easily when you go into the mainland or anywhere else, there are coyotes. The red wolf DNA that we're seeing here is restricted to this region, and you go eastward towards the boot of Louisiana, that's where we're finding it. So here on the island, it's a high chance that the animals that you see carry something. It could be down to like a 1%, and it could be up to 30-something. I will tag on the other question I saw in there, which was a more technical question about the genetic markers used. The last year's town hall, the data that we showed you was based on roughly 80,000 single nucleotide polymorphisms, so 80,000 genetic markers. What we're doing now is using that whole genome data, so we'll just say it's 2 billion nucleotides. And what we find is that the estimates from last year and the estimates from whole genome data, pretty spot on. So that helps me because then I could use fewer genetic markers and still get relatively reliable inferences, but we're trying to just move the way of whole genomes. That information is unbiased. So we are not just looking at a handful of markers that are only found in red wolves. We are looking at the whole spectrum. I include in that ancestry the chances that these are dogs. And I guarantee and promise I've never found dog genetics in your fancy coyotes. Now, I know that there's a story about that white one floating around. If you get a DNA sample or a scat, I'd rather prefer blood. I'm not the scat person here. But that would help me because I do suspect there's something very different about that animal. But these fancy coyotes, not dogs.
All right.
has there been a final decision about including green space for the animals on the new East End development? No. There has not been a decision or a promise or a or communication. We have asked, we've attempted to remain in contact. We don't have those answers today. How do the coyotes most often travel off the island? And another one, how do the coyotes travel across San Luis Pass? So they're not paying the toll. I have scraped them off the bridge. They do walk across the bridge. Now, that being said, being able to zoom in really, really close to every single one of those points, these guys are not afraid to get their feet wet. They absolutely will and do very frequently travel across the water. I don't know that they're swimming through the current at San Luis Pass. I doubt that. There's a bridge, and depending on the time of day or middle of the night, I'm sure they can find the opportunity to scoot right across it. I'll take the next one as well. Do you believe the coyotes have impacted the feral cat population? I think spay and neuter has affected the feral cat population. And regarding that, I would strongly suggest going to the Humane Society's TNR website. The numbers there have been updated as well. Coyotes absolutely will be the winner in a fight between a 30 to 40 pound coyote and a 6 to 10 pound feral cat. They, hands down, they're going to win. Same as a 6 or 9 pound chihuahua is going to be no match in a laws of the jungle fight for who gets to chase that mouse or squirrel. The coyote is going to win, which is why, even though we do have a feral cat TNR program, the safest place for your animals in the house. There are, on those coyote handouts, there is information on some things you can do to provide escape routes and keep your feral cat safe. But that really starts with bringing them inside. The TNR program has been in place for now over 10 years. Our live release rates for cat is now at no-kill status, 94% of the cats. Even with only 15 people redeeming their cats, we're at over 90% live release from the shelter. But our intake has been cut in half, and it's not because the coyotes have eaten half the cats on the island.
All right, I'm gonna take a couple. One question is there an academic reason that the ghost wolves are not referred to as coy wolves like the gray wolf hybrid canines in the Northeast? And yes, there is. One, they're not hybrids. We don't want to mash those terms together, which seems to indicate the sort of 50-50 mix-up, right? Like as Bridgett went through, there's this complex admixture associated with this continual, what we call backcrossing, backbreeding into the coyote population that gives us this really unique mosaic of ancestry that I think mashing two species names together doesn't encompass. Additionally, ghost, the term ghost alleles and ghost genetics is a scientific term that is exactly what this is. The lost genetic variation that we are now discovering that is not in the contemporary red wolf population is considered ghost. And so it is an academic reason that we use that term. There was another question in here. Oh yeah, population size. We did some non-invasive surveys a few years ago. We got about 50 distinct, unique individuals across the island. I would guess, and we're going to do more comprehensive, what we would call genetic marker recapture to get very, tight, discrete estimates of abundance. but it probably fluctuates around that number. I do not believe there's evidence at this point to think they're growing or shrinking in size, but have a somewhat stable population. But more information, more of our tracking, more of the non-invasive work is going to help us understand that. I'll answer one more, and then I'm going to hand it off here to Ron, but now I can't get it to switch. This is one I'd like to talk about. Are scat analyses used or could be used for anything other than the coyote red-nose genetic analysis, like diet study, which we talked about the diet, but then also using that as a survey for the broader biodiversity on the island? So can you use what the genetics from the coyote diet, the ghost wolf diet, to then understand the broader kind of ecosystem in which they're predating? And yes, that's a common practice in wildlife conservation studies, is you use diet analyses to look at broader biodiversity across a region. So that could be a kind of fun application of that type of method.
So there's a question on the slide, Ron Wooten shared showing development property in red. Is this property currently undeveloped? Yes, the overview screenshot that was up there of Google Earth, the 5 different colors represented different properties from CAD that are undeveloped. So the question was, yes, is it red and is it undeveloped? Yes, it is. It is undeveloped. It is currently owned. So.
You want to cycle back through, Josh?
Okay.
Corridors and who's guiding those, that would be good.
Oh, corridors.
And who's guiding the decisions on corridor use?
So I read recently a 150-foot corridor is planned in the Margaritaville development for ghost wolves to travel to the beach. I'm concerned if this is enough. How was 150 foot determined, and is this enough? Again, back to that, that measurement and request for that 150-foot corridor was a suggestion given the location and design of the property. Is it enough? I think it's really easy to argue for, wouldn't it be nice to give them 400 or 900 feet? Can they make proper use of 150 foot? Absolutely. Will we see 12 foot, 150 foot, or 3 foot? We don't have that answer. So whether it's enough or not, obviously more is, in this case, likely going to always be better, but it also really depends on the design of that 150 foot. 150 foot of just flat grass versus properly designed native plants and habitat is 2 completely different sets of 150 foot. So there's a right and wrong way to do a 150 foot corridor. And that's going to depend a lot whether we're talking about that property on the east end of the island or any of the other soon to be or not developed properties throughout the island. Next question.
Mr. Eldawy.
Excellent.
Where's the question again?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'll find the question.
The question was right there.
Okay, the question is, what current city or state laws, codes, or ordinance in Galveston hinder wildlife-friendly development such as conservation, corridor, habitat preservation, and wildlife preserves? Yeah, till now, no. We working closely with the city council and the development team in the city, and we sharing our vision with them. No objection at all, or any laws preventing us to implement or execute our development, contribute a large piece of our property for national preservation, natural resources. They welcome it. There's no any law stopping us from doing that. They love it and they supporting us. So we will continue in our the development. We're working very close now to get our PUD approved by the city council, and we hopefully they can approve it. Once the city council approve our PUD, we'll start immediately implement our plan. And I'm sure everyone will love it. This destination. So we'll look for it.
There was a question about studying behavior in the wild, and if you can only do it in captivity, or can you also study behavior and ecology in the wild? And yes, absolutely. Behavior has a lot of different aspects to it as well. So an animal's foraging ecology is part of its behavioral ecology, and so by studying diet, that's one way to understand behavior. But on top of that, we hope in the next year or two to have a much stronger camera trapping program, both on island but also off island, with some of our other field research that we're implementing that allows you to really look at behavior. It looks time of day and animals are traveling, how many individuals are they traveling with, things that having an individual collared animal wouldn't tell us, or picking up scat wouldn't tell us, that we could get through trail cameras. And so by piecing all these different pieces of information together, we can start getting a more holistic picture of behavior. Now, are we doing experiments like putting a red ball out and looking at how an animal interacts with a novel item like might be done in a captive facility? No, we're not doing that type of behavior here because that's not our question yet, but maybe we do want to look at exploratory, behavior of the Gulf Coast canines, and that could be something in the future. But right now it'd be more piecing together the different types of data we have and pairing it with cameras.
I'll add to that. One of the best ways we're getting behavior data right now is from you. That tool's been in place for the last 4 years, so please take advantage of it, because the collars give us a location. They don't give us behavior that we get from the public. So please do use that resource. We also had a question saying, well, one of my neighbors said that the only good thing to do is to shoot the coyotes. That should be everybody's response. This is Texas. I know there are people in this room that have quite the arsenal in your house. I know it. This is South Texas. There are a good portion of this crowd owns a firearm. Hopefully, you also know how to appropriately use that firearm safely, store it safely, and understand that the entire island here is not a shooting range. We have a shooting range, but it's not the entire island wide. It is a violation of the law here to discharge a firearm within the city limits of Galveston. Now, regardless of the percentage of red wolf that these animals do or do not have, talked at the very beginning, we weren't making decisions regarding legislation, regarding preserving this species, or any legal protections. Sadly, we're not here to announce that, congratulations, our fancy ghost wolves are legally protected as such. Legally, this is Texas, and in Texas, regardless of how fancy our coyotes are, the rest of the state's got to catch up. They are coyotes. By law, all of the Texas Parks and Wildlife rules surrounding coyotes apply. They do not have any additional protections beyond the fact that we in Galveston are actually bold enough to inform the public of how unique they are and give you the tools to address getting the fine opportunity to see one of these creatures. You actually are a much more informed public than so much of the state, where the only response you get from anybody in your city is, well, call Parks and Wildlife or Yeah, we don't know what to tell you. Because I promise you, that is the response for a lot of places throughout the state. Because this is Texas, you do have the right to defend yourself. Legally, we cannot ensure you get taken to jail because you have protected the safety of yourself or your property from a coyote. That does not make it open hunting season on these animals. And as everything that has been presented to you today has been based on sound data and sound science, we'll also tell you that there are many locations, including this island, that have attempted to control the coyote population only by utilizing knee-jerk vengeance and lethal force as a reactionary tool to give you cause for comfort because, hoorah, we shot that little booger. He won't bother you anymore. But I will offer you this. For your neighbor that believes the best thing you can do is shoot a coyote, I want you to think back about when you got to learn to ride a bike. Who taught you how to ride a bike? And who taught you the places you could go ride that bike that were safe? How do you get from your house to your favorite park and play? You learned that information from your parents, from your friends that knew how to get there. So when you remove the elders in the pack that share that information, because that's how these animals interact, they're a very close-knit family group, this pack of animals. If you remove the elders that are teaching the younger generation of coyotes how to ride a bike safely and get from point A, one place on the island, to the next, what happens if all the elders disappear and you've got children teaching children how to ride bikes and how to cross the street? You end up with a younger generation of coyotes having to make their own way, find new paths. They end up in new neighborhoods, causing trouble where they shouldn't because they didn't have the older animals around to teach them. All they had to do was take the other shortcut around where nobody bothers them, where they're not getting into trouble. Don't take your teachers out of the equation for knee-jerk vengeance. Because the other bad side of that can easily be shown in areas that have gone into full-out war against coyotes. It's not hard, and you talked about in 1974 when it was time to go about collecting these red wolves. They captured how many? 400?
Yeah.
Okay. They transported how many?
14.
We still have them on this island. You cannot kill away this coyote problem. Murder is not the answer. Just like a lot of other problems on this island, you just can't kill it away. And so we have to learn to coexist with things sometimes we don't understand. One of the best ways to do that is to learn about it. So thank you for coming. We have another question?
I've got two questions. The first one was, in our beautifully funded captive breeding program experiment, what's going to be the fate of those animals? I want to rest assured those animals will live out the rest of their lives in a very posh, cush environment of being our ambassadors. So they are going to the Endangered Wolf Center, and that is where they will be, incredibly happy, well-fed, and protected. They are not being euthanized, and they're not being released. They are new founders of a brand new way of thinking about conservation. The second question, or maybe not a question, but I wanted to kind of follow up on, I told you not to ask me about how much percent ancestry to go from a coyote to red wolf, but thank you for that person who asked that question anyways. I will tell you that there is a federal definition or a federal threshold. Right now, the answer to the question is how much red wolf DNA is needed. You need to have at least 87.5% of red wolf DNA to be considered a red wolf, an endangered species. If you dip below that, 84%, You are not considered a red wolf by the federal government right now. This is a conversation that Kristin and I and several other people have been having for several years about what that threshold means, how did they get it, and how can we change it. I know everybody might have their own opinion about what threshold is needed. In my opinion, if we detect it, that's very important endangered DNA. I don't care if it's 1% or 99%. This is something unique. My opinion, but I do happen to have the microphone. And there's empirical science behind some of that, so it's not just pure opinion. All right, other questions?
Well, this is a really easy question. There was a question if the non-invasive work is going to replace the collaring on Galveston Island, and no, we want to do both simultaneously. In fact, Josh has traps actively set to try to get collars on animals. So both.
Yeah, hopefully we get a game camera notification and that's where we go when we're done here.
I think we're mostly
Is that
done.
the end of our questions?
There's others. I'm going to try to, there's several others where I think is best to give you more of a detailed, thorough answer over email, so we're marking those. We have several stat track members, as Josh had pointed out. I feel we've done a decent job. You get to call it.
All right, so this is the third time we've done this, and I'm happy that you have all come out and listened to us and got to play catch up on the data. Please know that if we did not directly respond to your question tonight, you will get those answers via email. And check out the resources that have been shared. Lots of information available.
Get a shirt.
Yeah, get a shirt.
And
Thank you for coming.
if you think of any new thing you also want to tell us about or ask us about, I know I'm going to volunteer both myself and Kristin. We don't shy away from email questions, so don't hesitate to ever reach out. We value everything. I mean, Ron is my go-to example. I value hearing from you. I love responding. So don't hesitate. I hope to hear from all of you. Thank you.
All righty, thank you all.